Hey kids, welcome to another episode of This Week in iPad. Thanks for joining us. My name is Lon Harris. With me, as always, our resident expert,
Thank you.
Jacob Birch. I have to, introduce you by your title. So we got a really great show. I'm very excited to welcome our guest this week. He is the CEO of ngmoco. I'm pronouncing that right. Am I ngmoco?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I got a little confused. It actually stands for something. I did not realize this until I started doing my show research. It actually stands for, I've got it here.
Next Generation Mobile Company.
Next Generation Mobile Company.
Next Gaming? I think I got that right.
I think you're right. I think it's Next Generation Mobile Company. Yeah, I got it here in my notes. So they make We Rule, which I have downloaded and been playing with all week, and Touch Pets and a number of other sort of. It's games, but specifically designed with the sort of iPhone, iPad, and the social element in mind. So really kind of interesting new take on gaming. And Neil Young, their CEO, he comes in from the world of sort of console gaming. He worked for EA, Lord of the Rings games, Spore, Sims 2. So definitely going to be interested to talk to him about all that. Just sort of this is really kind of coming together as a new gaming platform, is what it's starting to seem like.
The iPad is almost closer to a console with a lot of tricks than it is a computer, you might say, with the reviewed app process. There's no sort of open, everything gets reviewed, everything gets in, so.
I sort of feel like, and Neil, definitely feel free to jump in, but I sort of feel like the iPhone kind of paradigm on it was to take basically the kind of really small level games you'd be used to playing on like your desktop, or like on any other sort of like small handheld, like a Game Boy, like the little one. Remember where the snake used to go through the maze and chase the little apple, and or Minesweeper. Yeah. And then the iPad, because it's so big and it's so glossy and it's so colorful, it's really inspiring people to just kind of take it to the next level and really make real games that feel like full, all-inclusive sort of video games. So we'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think if the iPhone sort of revolutionized mobile gaming, the iPad has the ability to kind of revolutionize gaming in the home and to some degree on the desktop. So, I think if you're Nintendo right now, you're a little nervous because your DS business is ultimately going to get affected by the iPhone and the iPod Touch. And maybe your Wii business is going to start getting encroached upon by people with iPads, playing games.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems, as far as the Wii goes, that was like, it's the family one, and it's the interactive,
it's easy to pick up.
Right, yeah, and it's that's sort of their whole kind of corner of the market. Now you've got the iPad, which is like, it really couldn't be easier to pick up. Yeah. You literally pick it up, you start doing this, you use your fingers, and everything is very intuitive. So lots more to talk about with Neil. I do want to do a couple of little introductory notes and then some news, and then we'll jump in and talk to Neil more about all of this gaming stuff, because I love games. It's fascinating to me. I love talking about them. So a couple of introductory notes here at the top of the show. I do want to talk about our iPad meetups. These are going to be not next week, but the week after, June 7th. The evening of, I think it's going to be 6 p.m. in California time, so it'll be 9 p.m. on the East Coast and everywhere around the world. The idea is you guys out there, the viewers, can host little get-togethers, parties, casual sort of meetups. Anywhere you are, you can plan one in your own city, and then we will do a live broadcast during that time. And we'll call out. We'll sort of call in to other get-togethers, and they could ask us questions and all that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in checking it out, and especially if you are interested in hosting a meetup in your own area, go to http://www.meetup.com/iPad. That'll take you right to our meetup page. You can schedule one right there, and then you can write me, lon@thisweekend.com, write any of us, contact@thisweekend.com. Let us know I'm hosting an iPad get-together. Here's my city, here's my Skype name, and we will actually call to you during the show, and you can interact with us, ask us questions. We can chat about anything you guys want to talk about as far as the iPad, what you're doing with it, cool apps you want to talk about. Even, if there's promotional stuff you want to talk about, you want to show everybody your new app, it's going to be real casual. It's not really like a regular episode of the show. It's more for you. the viewers and the fans to get a chance to just sort of interact with us, and it'll be fun.
I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to it. And so, yeah, go to meetup.com/iPad. You can get all the other information there, and you can get in touch with me or with any of us at This Weekend for more info there. I do want to also mention, selfishly, Tuesday, I am doing a This Week in YouTube marathon in celebration of our 100th episode. I don't want to belabor the point. We're going to count down the top 100 YouTube videos of all time. We're going to start at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. if you're on the East Coast, and I'm going to go as long as it's going to take. I'll be here in the studio live. I may run out there for potty breaks during the videos, but that's it. Probably going to take about 10 hours, I think, of my life.
Jerry Lewis style.
It is. I'll be exhausted by the end, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, enough banter, enough opening. I know everybody out there must be tired of housekeeping. It's never the most interesting part of the show. Let's jump into some news. The first big news story we have to talk about, obviously, it is an iPad show. It's an Apple show. Apple has passed Microsoft as the most valuable tech company in the world. And the New York Times called it the end of an era. Mobile devices are overtaking desktop computers as the biggest market for tech products. I should pull this up on my iPad. God, what a horrible host. As of Wednesday, Apple was valued at $222.12 billion, and Microsoft was at $219.18 billion. This is in terms of market cap. The only U.S. company valued higher is ExxonMobil, which is $278.64 billion. But they've earned it. They're good people. They've earned it. So the question really is, how significant are these numbers? I mean, is this really the end of an era? Is this kind of a trend we've been seeing for a long time? And the other thing I think is really interesting about this is Apple's main competition even Microsoft anymore? It almost seems like Google is really the people that are gunning for Apple.
I think the word on Twitter is that they haven't been direct competitors. I mean, they are in many of their markets, computers, operating systems, but Apple is so much more than just a sort of an operating system company now. And you can argue that Microsoft is too, but where are their successes? I know Xbox is a big sort of market share success, but it's still, I believe, not profitable. They're still losing money on it. So Google, absolutely. And I would not, I think it's a matter of if and not when Google surpasses Apple. I just can't imagine it not happening. It's just Google is doing so much, so well, so quickly.
I mean, Google's had a very big couple of weeks. I think it's tempting right now to say Google's going to win. Google's incredible.
I don't think necessarily Google will win all the wars. I think they're, claims will get staked and all that. But I just see Google just in so many more markets per se.
My one concern with Google, though, is it seems like they spread themselves so thin. Like, Apple is really focused. Like, they come out with the crazy new gadget. Everyone loves it. They spend a year or two just hitting that really hard, getting everyone who wants one to buy one, and then they're like, then they're on to the next thing. So it's like, okay, everybody has their iPhone. We've sold America that they want an iPhone. Now let's get them to buy the iPad, and then they'll do that. Google, it's like there's Buzz, there's Wave, there's TV, there's it's
But
Chrome,
are they spread thin? Or are they just spread? Like,
I mean, they're spread,
other than Wave, which don't get me started.
Buzz, though. I mean, where did that was going to be the biggest thing. It was going to revolutionize the internet and how you got your news, and it's all in your email. And I never hear anybody now talking about how much they love Google Buzz.
Right, but I think there's so many things that Google could just say, we're going to start this, and within a month they, with some exceptions, have the best product. Maps, anything on the web. Right now, Apple doesn't really, they have MobileMe, but no real big web presence. And I guess I'm making more on the web than on sort of hardware platforms. But
right, but I mean, again, at this point, Apple is like essentially a device company. I mean, it's just toys.
Yeah, fun toys, wonderful toys,
amazing toys, fun toys. But it almost feels to me like it's entertainment products practically,
right?
As opposed to like hardcore sort of computing. Applications. All right, let's move on to the next story. It's the Wired Magazine app. I have this on the iPad, so we'll show it off in a second here. Wired Magazine unveiled its long-awaited iPad app. Editor-in-chief Chris Anderson has called it called tablet computing, quote, a grand experiment in the future of media, as he is wont to do. This marks the third magazine app from Condé Nast after GQ and Vanity Fair. Let's take a look at the issue here. I'm going to pull it up on my screen so you guys can take a look. One cool thing, you can hold it vertically or horizontally. I know you can't see it right there. So this is just a random article I was reading. It's got, basically it's like a really cool, very intuitive way to browse the magazine. This is one of the interactive features we can close in there. You can actually scroll through, and it's a history of us landing stuff on the planet Mars, and you can actually scroll through and see where exactly on Mars we've landed, and then you can read little inserts that they have. So it's not, I won't lie, it's not massive. They're not doing incredible, mind-blowing things with the format, but they are trying to come up with fun ways to make it feel like you are, using a iPad to read your news. This one I thought was pretty cool too. Let's go back to it for a second. This one is pretty cool too. You can see this is the sort of thing, just a basic feature you would see about fermented foods that you would probably see in any kind of magazine, but the difference here is you can actually click through the different write-ups just at the touch of a button here with your finger. So it's really just like reading a magazine, but slightly integrated into the iPad, made and designed to be sort of browsed in an iPad. It is weird that you're paying so much money on the iPad for the app, and then it has ads in it. I guess it'd be like any other magazine. Like you would pay $5 for an issue of Wired, and then it would have all of these ads in it. But even so, that feels a little weird. I
mean, I think the sort of the trend has come out that if you're getting something tangible, something you can feel, something you can touch, you should be paying a little bit more for it. And charging the same price, $5 for both the print magazine and the digital, feels a little odd.
Yeah, I think it's also it's a different paradigm. I'm used to on the iPad. And this actually links right in very easily with a discussion of ngmoco. I'm used to on the iPad, if I pay for something up front, I've paid. It's a perfect, clean experience. I don't have ads. And if I don't pay and it's free, then I expect there's going to be enticements to buy things, or there's going to be ads. So yeah, their model in terms of the magazine is a little different from the model I would be used to for most apps. Having said that, if you are a fan of Wired, this is a cool way to read it. It does feel very sort of modern. It feels very sleek. And they're coming up. You can tell they're experimenting with how can we take the content we're already designing. The one I was just showing actually before I clicked off of it was there's actually a panel from a manga comic, and it's in Japanese, but if you click it, it reverses and it shows you the English translation. So it's little stuff, but it's a way for them to sort of try to integrate their content with the iPad, which is interesting. I could see it developing in a lot of interesting directions from there.
And I mean, they're getting in there first. They're playing around with it. I have the GQ app. I didn't get the Wired app. The 500 meg download sort of scared me away. And they're definitely trying. You can sell with their different names, then their different brands. They're trying different things. GQ is a much more straightforward. This is a port of the magazine. You will flip through. You will see what the magazine is.
Right. It's basically just a digital copy of the magazine.
There might be maybe will hyperlink to a sponsor instead of actually just the print ad, but it's not as interactive.
Right.
And with the Wired app, they're definitely sort of trying to make it, again, a couple notes I've gotten off John Gruber's blog during Fireball, he called it appear to the print magazine instead of just the digital sort of ugly stepsister. So they're definitely trying, and kudos to them, and I hope they figure it out.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat room. Somebody asked, is the Wired app a subscription model? Basically, it's $5 a month. So each issue is sort of its own app, and every month you would go to the App Store and download the new issue of Wired. I don't know, actually. It doesn't say if they're going to alert me because I downloaded this month's, if next month I'll get a push notification like, hey, the next one is available, you should buy it. I'm assuming that's what will happen. I'll just open the Wired app and it'll have a button that says, to get the newest issue, pay us $5 more. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying. It's not that it's the worst deal in the world. I mean, you're getting a whole magazine, and it's been sort of edited for the iPad specifically. If you get the paper copy already, I don't currently think there's a deal to free get the new version.
I doubt it.
You've got to pick one or the other. But it is a different model for the iPad. Usually in the App Store, if I'm paying $5, I'm getting it, and then I have it. It's not so much a every month I've got to re-up model. Although maybe it's early. Maybe that will be a model that does develop for the iPad.
Just to note, the GQ model is $5 up front. You get whatever the most current issue is, and then back issues and future issues are $3.
Yeah, so. And as they're noting in the chat room, which is true, Apple is getting it's more expensive than the magazine edition, in part because Apple's taking a portion of that money. Which was, I know Jason Calacanis, who hosts some of the other shows on our network, was taking a lot of issue with that.
But you could also argue the people who make the paper are getting whatever the
You
markup
could
is.
argue that there's like, or the newsstand
Yeah.
owner or something is getting a share. A 30% chunk is a decent sized chunk.
Fair enough.
Let's move on. We got a couple other stories, and I definitely want to chat with Neil for a while. I'm becoming obsessed with Rule, so we have to talk about it. It's very compelling. The next story: Jeff Bezos talked about the iPad and the Kindle, and what he's seeing is the kind of discussion between these two devices.
Sour grapes.
According to Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, the Kindle isn't going to get any more like the iPad. Bezos told the Wall Street Journal that the Kindle targets, quote, serious readers, and said that 90% of households are not serious reading households. So that's definitely a backhanded, not even a backhanded compliment, just not a compliment at all. It's just a dig.
It's sour grapes.
It's just a dig. It's like if you read books on the iPad, you're not serious. Bezos went on to say that though it would be relatively simple for Amazon to adopt some of Apple's features, particularly a bright, full-color LCD screen with a touch interface, he feels that e-ink makes for a better reading experience, especially in direct sunlight, which I have to say, that part I do agree with.
Absolutely.
If you're in direct sunlight, the iPad does get glare. In fact, you could see even when I try to show the screen here, if I hold it in just sort of the wrong way, you get some visual noise on there. And now I'm doing a bad job. There it is. So you see that is a problem, or it can be. So Bezos is right about that. He says it's also notable that the Kindle's ebook store, which you can get on the iPad, contains a far greater selection. And apparently Amazon's strategy moving forward is going to be to have the best selection of books for the best prices. As for this serious readers thing, it sounds like spin to me. This is spin Amazon's putting on it. Do you think that that's true, that the Kindle could adopt what the iPad is doing and they're just choosing not to because they want to cater to a higher class of reader?
Could they try and put a glossy screen on it and make a better browser? Sure. Would they succeed? No. I mean, I think they're making the right call. I mean, Apple is just so far ahead of, frankly, anyone in terms of successful hardware manufacturing that it's not worth it. You're never going to win. You're never going to catch up. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're sort of trying desperately to carve out some kind of new niche for the Kindle. Like the Kindle was the premier way to read books digitally, and now they've sort of been surpassed, or if at least somebody is biting at their heels for that. So now they're trying to look like, well, we're the best way to read books. We're the higher quality way if you really are serious about books. I also feel like real serious readers still buy books. Like if you're reading it on a digital device, you're kind of already taking a step back from being the most hardcore serious of readers.
Right. Or you can do both.
I can't picture my English professors from UCLA reading on iPads or Kindles, I have to be honest. They want first editions with embossed, embroidered covers.
We'll get this in the next story. I was an English major at UCLA, oddly enough.
I was an English minor, so there you go.
But I dealt with digital humanities professors who absolutely would love to read on one of these. But at the same time, if you're going to read, and if I'm going to read on the Sunlight, or if I'm going to read a situation where there's I'm in a plane and I have to get awkward, I'm just going to bring a book.
Yeah.
But that said, I did bring this on the train, and I did read it, bring it on an airplane, and I read all of Breakfast of Champions. I'm halfway through Infinite Jest. So.
Wow, it's a long one.
Yeah.
It's definitely lighter.
And Infinite Jest was on the iBook, so that was my one test.
Okay, one more story, because I definitely want to talk to Neil for a while, and then we got some apps to talk about. We're falling behind already. But I have to talk about this story because we're talking about being English majors. Neil Stephenson's interactive novel is coming to the iPad. Seattle's Subutai Corporation will produce an interactive serial novel for the iPad featuring authors including Neil Stephenson and Greg Bear. It's going to be known as the Mongoliad. The plot concerns Western European fears of a Mongolian invasion in the year 1241. The idea came to Stephenson while he was writing sword fighting scenes for his previous books. He realized he wanted to include realistic recreations of the sword fights in with the novels, and there was no other way for him to do that. So we've already seen that Alice in Wonderland iPad book, which I can show off. Basically, it's just interactive animations that go along with the text. So is this like the interactive novel, the iPad novel, is this kind of a new form of media like they seem to be indicating, or is this sort of a gimmicky deal?
I don't think it's new at all. And I think interactive fiction, has been around for a while, granted in less than stellar format, most would argue. But there are some great examples of sort of digital media, digital art, digital literature.
So here's the Alice ad. You can see that I move it around and the clock moves around, and it's very basic. I mean, they sort of sold this as this is this revolution in reading, and every kid's book is going to be like this, and it's kind of cool.
Right, and that said, my honors thesis at UCLA was on digital media and interactive fiction and stuff
my.
like this.
I'm talking to the right guy.
Yeah. I would say most right now are failures in one regard. Either they're poorly designed, or they were poorly programmed, or they're poorly written. But there are some really good examples out there. I encourage people to eliterature.org. There's wonderful examples out there. That said, one of the problems with a lot of them is it's just prone to gimmicks. It's like there's nothing new, there's nothing interesting about it, and I think it'll take evolution. It'll take a long time, but eventually it'll get there. And I think devices like the iPad are the way to do it.
Sort of the bridge to that.
Much like video. I
form.
mean, video games used to be just games and fun, but now. Roger Ebert would disagree. Some are, I would say, pieces of art. And I think interactive fiction needs to get there. It needs the maturity. It needs the tools. But it will get there. And I'm excited for it.
What a perfect segue into our discussion of ngmoco and Rerule with Neil Young. Well done. So Neil, we were talking a little bit already about like the iPad as a true like gaming console. I feel like we're on this show we talk about this a lot, and we're a little ahead of the curve on that. I feel like the rest of the world is still a few months or years away from seeing the iPad that way. So what do you think, if anything, is holding the iPad back from being considered on the same level as the Nintendo Wii or the Xbox or the PlayStation 3?
Very little. From a performance standpoint, the device is sort of somewhere between the handheld devices like the PSP or the DS and the Nintendo Wii. It's not as performant as an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3. So the complexity of games that you can build compared to those devices is a little bit, they're a little bit lower. But I mean, really, the only thing that's preventing it at the end of the day is adoption of, of the device by customers. And if Apple sells 8 to 10 million by the end of this year, as I think analysts are now predicting, they'll be well on their way to building a competitive gaming platform. And if you look at the App Store, whilst it's not quite as dominated as by games as it is on the iPhone, there's still a really healthy number of games in the top applications. So. So I think customers at the end of the day, are people like us, and they like to play games as well as do other things with their device. And I think it's a great device for playing.
It is a great device for gaming, and becoming more so. And I think one of the things I really like about it and we'll show a little bit of Rerule, but one of the things about these games is so cool is a lot of the games are designed to be kind of, you do a little bit and then you can leave and then you come back. It's like it knows that it's on a mobile system, so that it knows that you're probably waiting for a bus and you want to play something for 10 minutes, but it's not like you have to devote 17 straight hours to beating it like Kid Icarus or something. I can't believe I came up with Kid Icarus. But you know what I'm saying. Like Rerule is, you plant your vegetables. Here, I'll play a little bit of it. I'll show you my kingdom, Neil. I'm a little embarrassed. Jason, my boss, is kicking my butt. His kingdom is far more impressive than mine.
What level?
I'm at I think 11 or 12. He's at like 15. But even just in the size, you can see actually I got some of my crops have come in. So there's my asparagus. I'm going to harvest it. There's my potatoes. But, I'll do a little bit. I'll play around a little bit. I'll make some money. I'll plant some new stuff. And that's really, all I'll do right now. And then I'll come back in a few hours and other crops will have grown. Here, I'll pull this out here so you can see it. Or I'll build a few things. I just built this water tower right back here. But it's not designed for me to hang out here for 5 hours. I mean, I can if I want to, and especially if I make an in-game purchase of some mojo, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's really designed for me to play for a little bit, have some fun, get back to work, play a little bit more, get back to work for a while, play a little more, go home and commute, and then play when I get home, and that kind of stuff. Words with Friends is another game, not an ngmoco game, but another game that I've been playing that is sort of designed in that way.
Right.
And it's really interesting. It's kind of a new theory. Like how much of that works into your sort of planning when you're putting the game together of basically working around people's schedules and how they want to play games.
Well, I think the key is how they want to play games. So, Rerule is structured in such a way that if you only have a few minutes to play it, you can. But if you want to sit down and, play for half an hour or an hour and design out an elaborate kingdom, you can do that too. And When you're trying to build games, like this, like the types of games that we build on the type of devices that we build them for, you have to be really respectful and cognizant of what the player wants to do and how to build a play experience that scales with them.
Yeah, I mean, and on that same sort of note, just talking about how people play the games, ngmoco also works with runs the Plus social gaming network. So you basically import your social media connections, your friends, your email, people you've contacted in email, your Facebook friends, into the game. It's sort of like how Zynga works inside of Facebook. So, what is sort of the differences between that kind of a system versus something like Xbox Live or the interactive elements of other games that we played? I mean, how do you sort of leverage the fact that people want to bring in their social connections into the game?
Well, the social connections make a huge difference to how people end up playing the game. WeRule has a sort of set of features that we call social obligation. So, you could go visit my kingdom, place an order at one of my buildings. I'll get a push notification. I might be on my phone, and the push notification will come there if that's the last place I played WeRule on, or if last place I played it on the iPad. It'll come to the iPad, letting me know that there's an order that's been placed, which brings me back into the game, and then sort of engages me in that play cycle again as I fulfill that order for you.
Sorry, go ahead.
That is, when you look at the data about the number of sessions per day that users play WeRule, there's a really interesting correlation between that and the number of friends that they have. The average player in WeRule comes back 8 times a day and has 11 friends. If you have 0 friends, you tend to come back 4 or 5 times a day. And if you have over 20 friends, you tend to come back 16 times a day. So, friends make a difference, and the value of those social connections is really, really high in terms of the gameplay experience.
I'm betting a lot of that too is your sort of natural competitiveness taking over.
Yeah.
I know I feel that way. Like, if I know people are looking at my kingdom, well, it's like I want it to be bigger. I want to be moving forward. I especially don't want my crops to spoil. That's very like if you leave it too long and you get the little frowny face. Like, I don't want people to come to my kingdom and see I'm not being a good caretaker. So I definitely think that that's probably, I mean, the push notification thing is interesting. It's interesting to me that that's really the way, because I don't know if that's the same. I feel like in Zynga and in the Facebook games, the advantage of the social element is just that you're getting the word out. You're getting everybody to share, like, hey, I'm playing Farmville, or hey, I'm playing Treasure Isle or Mafia Wars or whatever. And then it's just getting the word out. There's a game here. You should come check it out. Whereas, interestingly, on WeRule, it's actually getting just people to get addicted and want to come back a ton. So that's kind of interesting. Speaking of which, like I feel like a game like WeRule works best, or is sort of designed to get that addictive side. Like, you want people to be coming back again and again and again. It's really more effective that way. So what is the secret when you hear pitches for new games? Like, what is the thing that sort of sends off that alarm in your head, like, this is something people will really be compelled by? Like, this is something that is just going to be a killer idea for a really, like, profitable, compelling, addictive game?
Sure. That's a tough question. If you think about games tend to be kind of defined by sort of 3 things. The first is the appeal of the concept, and probably the best way to describe that is, if you had 2 game teams that were equally funded, equally staffed with the same game design, and one was building a game in the Star Wars universe, one was building it in the Star Trek universe, and one was building it in the Babylon 5 universe, the Star Wars game would sell more than the Star Trek game, which would sell more than the Babylon 5 game, because there's a natural audience and natural audience appeal of each of those universes. So one thing that that we look for is we try to pick concepts and ideas that resonate broadly, and that's sort of one of the sort of the key underpinnings for the way that we think about things. The second is execution. When you look at a game pitch, you want to believe that it can be done well, that it suits the device, and that the people who are building it are super capable of making something great. And then the last thing is it innovative? Does it have sort of 1 to 3 elements that, kind of really make it stand out amongst the crowd. And so that's kind of the lens that we put on things. And then what you're talking about with sort of, what you're calling addiction, we think of as compulsion. And all great games have a really tight compulsion loop. And a compulsion loop is probably best described as, if you think about Diablo, sort of classic PC game, it's like, okay, I kill things to get XP, so I can level up, so I can get better items, so I can kill things better again.
Right.
And that loop and that cycle is a compulsion loop. And great video games, you can draw that loop, and it's like a perpetual machine, And
right.
what we try to do is we try to have a really tight compulsion loop, and then take those elements of social obligation, social expression, which is you were referring to, the desire to make your kingdom look good. That's really you socially expressing yourself. And we take those ideas and we try to put them at the very heart of that compulsion loop, so they're sort of mainlined into the flow of the game.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, it clearly works, because it's one of those games that I'm telling people about, and I'm watching them get invested in, even against maybe even their original instinct of, oh, I don't want to get into another one of these games, or I'll get sucked in. And then I'm watching Jacob right now, who swore to me he was not going to get addicted to We Rule.
No swearing.
And he is now moving things around and making his kingdom look pretty. So it definitely, even if you're aware of what the game is sort of doing, it still works like gangbusters. So last thing I really want to get into here with you, the decision to make it and we were talking about this with the Wired app, the in-game purchase route instead of make people just pay up front. Because you could have charged like $9.99 for We Rule when you first get it. Instead, it's totally free. You can get started and you can play. You really don't need to make any purchases, but you have the option of purchasing Mojo, which for the people who don't play, you buy Mojo, you can use that to grow your crops faster, to build your buildings faster. It basically just lets you make your kingdom that much faster, whereas you'd have to wait to do all that kind of stuff until you level up without making the purchases. So, what was the biggest factor in making that decision? Is this something you sort of tested with a few games to see how it would work, or were you just very confident right off that, oh no, people are going to get really sucked in and they're going to want to pay $10, $20 to make their kingdom that much exponentially better?
Yeah, I mean, last summer we made a decision across our company to focus on free-to-play games, and the first free-to-play games that we released on the iPhone were Touch Pets and Eliminate. So Touch Pets is a pet simulator with a social network that's free-to-play, and Eliminate is a real-time first-person shooter, deathmatch shooter. That you can play over 3G and Wi-Fi, that had our first sort of implementations of free-to-play, inside them, and we have been expanding those ideas through things like We Rule and another one of our games on the iPad, Godfinger, which is also a free product. And I think the beauty of the free-to-play model, if you do it right, is you get to reach lots and lots of people. And a small percentage of those people choose to monetize by purchasing Mojo. Obviously, there are opportunities to monetize people through advertising and other mechanisms. But I think it opens you up to the widest audience possible. And certainly at this stage in the life of these devices, and I think honestly, as you kind of look forward, free-to-play gaming, if done well, sort of gives you the best of both worlds. So as a customer, you can choose to spend $9.99, you can choose to spend $99.99, you can choose to spend nothing. And the only thing that sort of dictates, the degree to which you want to spend is yourself. So, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the system, and that's sort of one of the reasons why we like it. It forces you down a different route when you're building games and you're building a business, because what you're really doing is you're making games as a service, and the benefit to the customer there is, the game's changing. It's not just changing with updates, it's changing because we're pushing new content on the server side. There are new buildings that have become, available. I think the last push we did was the Orange Groves, and gold roads. You know, we've got another push coming next week. We've just done an update 1.05, which was just approved on the iPhone. It's going to get approved real soon on iPad. That will fix that really annoying rotation bug, amongst a whole bunch of other additions to the software. So when you've got this sort of model where you're building a relationship with customers over time, you can afford to run your business over time and make changes and improvements to the software, you know, over its life.
Yeah, I mean, Ultra, and the other great benefit to the player is that you have to have a lot of confidence in your game. It has to be fun, otherwise I'm going to download it for free, and I'm not going to want to spend more money on it or invest it. I'm going to be like, oh, this is crummy, and I'm going to delete it right away. So it's really like if you're getting a free game, then the only sort of mechanism for making money is they're advertising to you, so you have to spend some time in there, or you have to buy things in the game to do better in the game. It's really almost like a guarantee, like this person has a lot of confidence in what they're designing, as opposed to like those old crummy, like the E.T. game for Atari, where it just is terrible and they know it's terrible and they're putting it out there anyway because they built it already. And what are you going to do? So that's definitely something when I see that a game is free, I'm thinking like, well, they must have a certain level of confidence that I'm actually going to like it and want to spend some time in there.
Yeah, or if you don't have to pay. You know?
Right, you don't have to pay and you'll just delete it, and that won't be a very successful business for very long unless they make some major improvements. So let's move in. We do a segment every week where we evaluate some different apps that have the same function. We like to call it Planet of the Apps.
You maniacs! Damn you! God damn you all to hell!
Don't download it, Vaughn. You might not like how it runs.
Never get tired of that. I could watch that 100 times.
And you have.
And I have. One more question before we jump into Planet of the Apps. I know, terrible hosting for me, but we got a late-breaking question in the chat room for Neil. I want to make sure we get to it. Larabin asks, what are the biggest challenges of building and managing an application like WeRule?
What are the biggest challenges in building? It's the design and the implementation. You know, it's hard sometimes to make make games. When you think about a game as a service, it's a game that's played over a really long period of time. And so you have to think about not just the initial user experience, but you have to think about how you sustain people and keep people engaged moving through the levels of the game. And so, you know, it's almost like in traditional games, the developer's job ends when you ship the product.
Right, yeah.
In free-to-play games, games as a service, it's almost like it just begins. And then infrastructure. You know, a game like WeRule really runs in the cloud.
Right.
And so keeping the infrastructure, up and running, especially if you have a big, hit or success like WeRule, is a challenge. I mean, we have sort of huge data centers that are, serving these games. And I mean, the game is played many millions of times a day by individual people. And so, that creates quite a challenge.
And that's just here in our office. That's just here.
That's right. That's just by you.
Yeah. So you guys actually beta test in Canada, right? So you open it up to like a set amount of people and then to like gauge how popular it's going to be?
Popularity is one piece, but really what we're looking at is what we call engagement and retention. And, are users coming back? Are they enjoying it? Are they moving through the play experience?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's really that determines whether or not the game is going to do well or not.
Sure.
And so that's the stuff that we're, we're very focused on. And we choose Canada because, it's a fairly it's a big enough market to be representative of how the product will perform. It's geographically diverse enough so that if you've got a game that requires low latency, like a shooter game, for example, you can test connections over, geographic scale. With the exception of Quebec, it's English speaking, and so we can release it in a single language.
Right. Interesting. All right, let's jump into some of these apps. Thanks a lot, Neil, for answering that. This week we're doing presentation meeting apps. It seems like this, unlike a lot of other weeks where there's like dozens of apps that do the same thing, this one it seems like there's some big players and then there's a few stragglers. There's just a lot less different kinds of software. I think everybody sort of agreed on a few apps that really are the big players in this field.
Right.
So you're going to talk about those. And then I will jump in and talk about some of the underlying
stragglers.
ones. And then the stragglers. And then we both looked at some actual meeting software, like how to have a meeting on your iPad, which I wouldn't have actually thought would work. So I've been using Cisco WebEx. I'll give a little demo if it's working on my iPad right now. But I was actually amazed at how smooth it works. I mean, I was sharing documents with myself from a computer onto the iPad, and it was an incredibly smooth transition in the experience from one media to the other. So we'll show some of those. First, though, let's get started with some of the basic apps that you checked out. I was looking at, how easy were they to use. What is the level of quality in terms of the presentation? If you're going to use this to make a presentation, is it going to look like an 8th grader did it, or is it going to look like a real presentation? How compatible is it with other kinds of software and documents you'd be using? And then, just features and sort of general value.
Yeah. So I think a big reason why there's not a lot out there is that Apple has an app that does it.
Yeah,
Keynote.
it's part of the iWork suite. Yes.
So I actually use 2 of the apps I'll be talking about. We run through meetup.com, a meetup here 3rd Tuesday of every month on a web platform that we use, and I was giving a very quick talk, a 5-minute talk on it, and I decided to try and do the entire thing on my iPad, not touch a computer at all until I was actually giving the presentation.
Right.
So I wrote it in Keynote. It's
called Django. We should mention this platform so
Yeah.
people don't get confused by seeing that
crazy,
word there.
crazy word that has a D in
Named,
it.
I was disappointed to find, named for Django Reinhardt, the guitarist,
Yes.
not Django, the classic spaghetti western.
I'm sorry. I'll let them know your
Let them know. I think they should have named it
dissatisfaction.
Django for
Let
different
Jacob and
reasons.
Adrian know. So, but if you're familiar with Keynote or PowerPoint at all, it's sort of a stripped-down version of that. Really elegant to use. I had a really good time working with it. I think the biggest question I get from more power computer users on can I switch to an iPad instead of a laptop, and they always ask, well, I need to give PowerPoint. I need to give this, and PowerPoint might be a little bit sketchy, but when it comes to just simple presentation, it really is sort of marvelous. You can add media, you can add pictures, you can add text, you can add shapes.
It's control. I mean, for me, a lot of these apps, it's about the level of control you have. Because so often with the touchscreen, it's just not precise. You just need something that is really precise to lay out something like a presentation. And that's what I found with Keynote when I've used it, is it actually has a pretty good level of precision in terms of movement with your fingers. It goes where you want it to go.
In certain instances, it's actually better than a mouse. It's more accurate than a mouse. So you touch it and boom, that's where it is. You don't need to, this compared to maybe using Keynote on a Mac or PowerPoint.
You have to be tabbing.
I think it works a little bit better on the PC, but this compared to, say, Google Docs presentation, I was frustrated getting Google Docs as it's all in a web browser to be centered or to be exactly where I wanted, because it only had sort of so much maturity. This was a breeze. I can sort of go through my slides. There are some downsides and some clear grievances. You lose a lot of the customization. I think there's a dozen or so backgrounds and themes you can pick, and that's it. You're stuck. There's no creating on your own. There's nothing like that. And it's still, if you have to give a 100-slide presentation, it's going to get tedious. Your hand's going to get sore. There's nothing you can really do. So when it comes to giving you a short 5-10-slide presentation, maybe even a little bit longer, or you wanted to make a cute little slideshow to show your family pictures or anything like that, especially if they're already on your iPad, it's a wonderful, highly recommended. It's easily worth the $10.
And that's most presentation. I mean, most presentations you're not giving the, Randy Pauch last lecture or whatever, where it's going to take 4 hours to get everything out. You're sort of giving a 15-minute little prezo, and then you're done.
And where the next app, and I won't spoil it too much, another big problem is you can connect it directly with a VGA dongle to a projector, but there's not a really good way. If I have this and I'm in the background and I want to show on a computer projecting the meeting somewhere and control it from there, not a good way built in the Keynote to do that. But there are solutions elsewhere, but I'll let you you go on.
Okay, so the first one I looked at was called iMeeting Pad. I'll pull it up here. Obviously not designed to be full-featured like... delete. Oh, now it's not working. Did it freeze? I think this might have just frozen my computer. Oh, there we go. It's not clearing. I'll just start a new one. Oh, sorry, everybody. Taking a second. We'll call this test. I'm starting a new meeting. So anyway, this is basically a way to take notes during a meeting. And now it is giving me crap. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry, folks. Now it's giving me trouble. Can I at least erase or something? Oh,
the star rating goes down.
Oh, it is. The star rating is going down because I can't figure out how to clear my screen here. Oh, there we go. Okay. I figured it out. My fault. No fault of my meeting guy. So the idea here is you could pick a different kind of paper if you want. You can type notes, so I could be keeping my notes on here during a presentation or something. I'll draw a little box here and then say, I am writing notes. You could even do little doodles. You could draw over here, so I could draw. It's not as intuitive as I would sort of have hoped. All right, so draw's not working. Ugh, miserable. All right, you get what I'm saying. I don't know why this is not working right now, whereas it was before. You could pick your different fonts there. And you can doodle, and you could do all kinds of little stuff like that with it. There we go. Now it'll draw. And then even if you're bored, you can even hit the sound button here, and it'll play little sounds you can't hear. So if you're bored in a meeting, you could interrupt. And the best part about this one, the thing that I thought was cool enough to sort of show it off, was that you could then hook this in and project it. This would work in a meeting. So if I was taking notes in a meeting and I sketched up something real quick and said, oh, hey, that reminds me, why don't we try to do something like this or redesign it this way, you could actually show everybody what you were working on. I'm not going to draw. I know in the chat room they're making fun of my drawing skills. I'm not going to draw, but I just wanted to show that you can do that. You can manipulate shapes. It's called iMeeting Pad for anybody who's interested. Real simple, not an expensive app. I think it was a couple dollars. And it is, it's nice. Be good for note-taking while you're in a meeting, just to sort of help you keep all your thoughts in one place, and then if you wanted to show afterwards what you were working on, you could, and also, just like have a little fun goof around in a meeting if it's going on too long. Right. You can put a toilet flushing and make people feel bad. Yeah. So, not going to change or revolutionize the way you hold meetings. Certainly not powerful like Keynote, but a fun app nonetheless.
So our previous dilemma with Keynote was that you can hook it up directly to VGA, but that constricts you where you are. And the joy of the iPad is you pick it up, you do whatever you want with it. You want to be able to control a presentation remotely. An app that I've found that I'm sort of enamored with and really like and used with great satisfaction is called Mighty Meeting. It's an online service along with the iPad service. The online account, at least right now, is totally free. The app itself is, I believe, $3. It's been a while since I bought it. I can get it up on here. So basically what you can do is you can upload presentations directly if you're on your computer, but if you're from Keynote, you share it, you email a unique email address, and you attach a PDF file, which you can do through Keynote. You wait about 2 or 3 minutes for it to get encoded, and then it'll appear right here. You tell it to start a meeting. Excuse me, that's the wrong button. I think this is, there you go. Meet now online. And then whatever computer is giving the presentation, you log onto that, and then whatever is on your iPad is what happens. We can't really show it because we don't have a computer here.
Right.
But within, I'd say, a half a second, if I flip a slide, it appears on the computer. And if I flip a slide, and it does it all through Wi-Fi, it does it all through the internet. It works really seamlessly. It's got a few other features where it tries to compete with the apps we'll be talking later, GoToMeeting, WebEx, where you can share meetings and you can do stuff like that. It's a little bit weak in that area right now just because it's so new. My only other complaint is that when you logged on wirelessly on the internet through the account, there's no good way to full screen the presentation, which is what I was trying to use it for. It worked out by zooming in the computer itself, but not a lot of, it would be nice to one-click, boom, and it's a nice, clean, full-screen version of the PDF. That said, made it a breeze. I made the presentation, I emailed myself, and within 2 minutes, I'm up and running wirelessly presenting my my presentation at the Django meeting. So had a great time with it. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'm just it's definitely a cool looking app, very full featured. You know, I mean that's what you want. And I'm trying to log into my meeting right now. I'm hoping this is going to work on WebEx so I can show people.
And I should thank Mr. Calacanis for pointing out Mighty Meeting. He's a fan of the company and told me to use it. So thank you, Jason. Yeah,
and actually it's pretty hard to find like another app out there that works like Keynote. Because they seem to sort of, I don't know if Apple is specifically trying to keep people from designing apps that are like their own apps. It seems like sometimes they just don't let them in the store, but some of them they do, and I'm not actually clear on what their rules are about whether you can compete with them or not.
Right.
It seems like once they move into an area, everybody else kind of gives up almost. Like.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think a canonical example, and maybe Apple allowed it just to say, see, we'll allow it, is the Opera browser they allowed through finally on the App Store, along with, I mean, they made a poker game, and there's tons and tons of poker games out there. But I just think when Keynote really, you're not going to really make a presentation slide on the iPhone, and then when it was one that was announced with the iPad, probably there's not a lot of reason to try and take market share from the company that is in sight beyond you.
Yeah. So let's take a look real quickly here at the WebEx app. I finally got it working. You can see we're not sharing any content, but this is where it would all appear. I'm actually connected to an account that I set up at my computer. So, here's all your information, and I'm actually connected right now. If I was sharing something on my computer, it would just appear here on my screen. Unfortunately, I don't want to run back there and actually show you guys. Trust me, it would work. I tried it before. Here are the participants. You can see there's my computer version of me, and there's myself. And we're chatting right now, so I could actually bring up this little window and actually type like, "Hi, Lon, I'm in the studio." And it'll show up on my computer back there. And as well, it would work for documents. The one downside is that, and there you can see it went through. The one downside is that it does not support audio. It's not a phone. So you can't call in. You'd have to have the phone and your iPad if you wanted to talk to the people while you were seeing the presentation. But still, the ability to sort of have that movie or have that visual up while you're meeting and be able to see whatever they're sharing on their screen, on your screen, it's actually really useful and amazing how fast it is. It's real zippy on the iPad. Like you wouldn't notice you're sort of downloading everything over Wi-Fi. Your images are popping up instantly.
I used GoToMeeting. I can't share right now because my computer's locked, and it apparently doesn't work when your computer's locked. That said, similar reaction. If you're at all familiar with the GoToMeeting product, it's the same thing. You do get audio. It uses the iPad's microphone, so you can talk to it. And I was talking to myself and talking to someone stationed on my computer. It worked really well.
That's a big. I got to figure that's a big advantage of the audio working. Like that was the real thing about WebEx that bugged me was that none of the. I'm not getting any of the call. I can't hear any audio, even through just like play over the speaker. Nothing. So you really have to. It only works in tandem with other conference call software.
And that said, I believe, and someone can prove me wrong. In my testing, if I was in a conference call, I couldn't talk on it. But if everyone was on a computer through a microphone system and the presenter switched it to microphone speaker, then the iPad microphone worked flawlessly.
Oh, well, there you go.
So it worked. I was pretty happy with it. It was smooth. It was as smooth as I was expecting. It wasn't like liquid quick, but no complaints there. Some minor complaints that I was reading reviews of it. GoToWebinar doesn't work. It's one of their bigger platforms. It's not compatible with the iPad, and you can't present from the iPad itself, and you lose some of the document a few of the features that you would get if you were on a full-fledged computer. So it'd be really great if you were supposed to be a part of a meeting, but you're on a trip and you feel like you should be there and sort of at least listen in and maybe say a few comments.
Right.
It'd be a perfect solution for that, but at the same time, I don't think it necessarily replaces a desktop client.
Exactly.
And we should mention just GoToMeeting app was free, and the basic subscription was, I think, $49.95.
Yeah, I think both apps themselves, the iPad apps are free, and then you have to participate. You have to pay the service overall to use it. There's a 30-day free trial, I know, on WebEx.
The same with GoToMeeting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at all interested. Take a look, see what you think, and you can choose after a month if you like it. You can sign up on the site, and I think it's not that crazy expensive, like $10, $12 or something.
Well, GoToMeeting is $50 a month.
Oh, I think WebEx is cheaper, but I didn't. Good host would have.
That said, I would evaluate on the desktop clients and on the product itself, not the iPad, because there's still work to be done in both.
Definitely. So I think that we're pretty much out of time. It's been the full hour. I know it breezes by every week for me.
Quick.
A few closing notes. Definitely be sure to check out our other great thisweekend.com shows. You can go to thisweekend.com. There's a drop down on the front page. We're kickstarting a new one. We actually filmed a pilot for a brand new one today. So that's going to premiere probably next week, This Week in Social Media.
Yep.
We're working on a bunch of more exciting shows. I don't know if I'm at liberty to talk about exactly what they're going to be, but we're going to do some entertainment shows. We've got a lot of cool new stuff coming up. Plus our venerable, popular shows that we already have. Kevin Pollak's Chat Show on Sundays. This Week in Startups, which will be tomorrow. And, This Week in Android, which is also tomorrow. Tomorrow on This Week in Startups, we actually have Tim Young of Socialcast, which is a really cool product that we use at Mahalo. Or I should say they use at Mahalo. I still think of myself part of Mahalo. So that's going to be a great show. And Android as well is coming up tomorrow. And if you wanted to see the casting call that we held last week, over the weekend, we brought in a lot of cool hosts. It was a really fun afternoon. We've got all the footage, 3 hours long, up on the site. So you can go to This Week in Casting, and you can see that as well. So check that out. Go to thisweekend.com. Thanks so much to Neil Young of ngmoco. Love the product. We're both having fun with it. Congratulations on all the success, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thanks always to Jacob Birch, my lovely and talented co-host. And we will see you guys next time on This Week in iPad.